Brian says, I have been in my relationship for over 9 years and try to be a giving partner, although I find it difficult to take charge, as I feel some of these expectations are overly masculine. And while I have not specifically identified as gender non-binary, I also feel many of the masculine or feminine attributes seem undesirable to me. I think I want to make sure that there is no doubt of full consent while with talking and asking about what I like. But sometimes even having trouble talking about what I want with feelings I will be rejected or disliked. I think with discussions, including a therapist, I found out my girlfriend is learning to accept ideas of kink as her thought before was more extreme examples like sadism or dominatrix type activities.
Interesting. Okay. So this seems like it's pulling in a couple different threads here. So we're talking about consent, first of all, and that's super important. We're talking about gender identity and gender roles and how comfortable you're feeling in those. We're talking about going to therapy to talk about these things, which we always like. And then we're talking about kink and kind of what that looks like. And is it always something extreme like being a dominatrix or being dommed in that way? So yeah, lots of different areas to jump into. Rudy, I'm excited to see where you'll take this.
Yeah, so with the first part at least of feeling like there are certain expectations of you in the bedroom associated with your gender, I think that that's something that everybody experiences to one degree or another. Again, this is something that me and my partner went through, sort of like, he is a cis male and I'm not a cis female, but I definitely am a lot more femme. And we discovered pretty quickly that the traditional sort of dom sub male female dynamic does not work for us. That's and that's not, totally uncommon. I think everybody has to sort of work that out for themselves between themselves and their partner. That is totally okay and totally normal. Not everybody fits into that mold. And you don't have to identify as non-binary to not accept or to reject some of the things associated with femininity or masculinity. You don't have to be like, I am an entirely different gender than either of those. You can just say, I am what I am. I mean, you don't have to take on a label at all if you don't want to. But, there's so many words out there. Odds are you could probably find one that best describes you if the one you're using now doesn't quite fit.
I love that. Yeah, there's that fine line between deciding, oh, none of this works for me, I am something different, or, oh, there are some expectations here that I don't feel comfortable with, I'm going to reject those while maintaining the gender that I am. So yeah, I think that might be a much larger conversation to have with yourself, but no rush at this point. Do the things you like, don't do the things you don't like, and make sure you're communicating with your partner. I'm interested in the kink aspect of this and kind of communicating what that looks like, especially in the area of consent, because a lot of people seem to have this idea that somehow BDSM and kink are less consensual than non-kink, or we call it sometimes vanilla sex, right? And this idea that, oh, if I'm engaging with my partner in a way that is anything other than the expected sexual relationship, then somehow there's that consent concern. And while I always want to say, yes, consent is important across the board, enthusiasm, total buy-in, all of that, checking in while sex is happening, it's a lot easier to do that a lot of times in a BDSM situation and a lot more necessary. And so think about it in terms of if you only ever think about sex in this very purity culture, kind of sub-dom, male, female, like missionary position style sex, there isn't a lot of communication happening there, right? And there's a lot of expectation placed on both partners that they know what's going to happen. They've already agreed to it. Like there's There's not going to be any conversation around, okay, well, how does this feel for you? And okay, well, can I do this now? Is that comfortable? Or hey, I want to try something brand new. Can we do this instead tonight? A lot of the time, that conversational piece just isn't there, and so it actually makes it a lot more likely that that kind of sexual encounter will be non-consensual. Whereas if you are engaging healthily in a BDSM or kinky type of sexual relationship, that communication needs to be always on point, right? You need to communicate before you start. You need to make sure you have safe words. You need to make sure that you're checking in during sex, and then after sex, talking about, aftercare and cuddling and, did that work? Do you want to try something different next time? Was there anything that was triggering for you? And so that conversation piece is kind of needs to be built into a kink relationship in a way that actually protects you from a lot of non-consensual, like accidental non-consent, because you're talking about it every step of the way. So it doesn't have to be something, huge. Like you don't have to come out in full leather gear necessarily your first night or ever if you don't want to. But as you're kind of playing around in this space, making sure you are being conversational, treating it like the important conversation that it is. And that will safeguard against a lot of those concerns around consent.
Awesome.
Hanna.
Yeah. No, you both said that all so wonderfully. What Rudy was saying about how you can identify your gender one way isn't going to negate the way the role you play in bed, essentially. If you're a man and you're more submissive in bed, that doesn't make you any less of a man. I mean, if you feel like you might be non-binary because of that, I mean, that's something definitely you should explore. But the role you play sexually isn't going to negate your gender, essentially. But it's so case by case, I suppose. The thing about kink and exploring BDSM, it's such a broad spectrum, and I think that Brian's already on the right track with going to a therapist and being open to communication and really being concerned about consent. Also, I just want to point out that it's really easy to kind of forget about your own consent and to go along with things you're not comfortable with for the sake of your partner. So I always keep that in the back of your mind as well while you're trying to figure out what your partner's comfortable with. Always make sure that you are being honest with yourself and what you want. And having that conversation with your partner, I mean, you're already on the right track. I mean, wanting to see a therapist, or if you already are seeing a therapist and just talking with your partner and exploring new ideas, that's amazing.
Yeah, I love that piece of making sure that you're getting your own consent too and keeping that forefront as well. Awesome.
Yeah, that's something that actually me and my partner had to work out, because both of us, at least at the beginning of our relationship to varying degrees, had problems advocating for ourselves, because we both really wanted to be doing everything we could for the other person. And something that has really helped both of us was keeping in mind, hey, I don't want to do something to my partner that they aren't fully consenting to, and I'm sure they want the same from me. Like, keeping in mind that your partner is not a monster, your partner is not totally selfish, and is not, just keeping in mind your partner cares about you and cares about your consent. And if you're not advocating for yourself, then you are actually doing them a disservice. If you're the kind of person that puts your partner's needs ahead, framing it that way in your mind might be a good way to remember that advocating for yourself is not just for you. Because if your partner gives a shit about you, they will want you to advocate for yourself.